and WNST. Day now with New England next week in first place and feeling, and I think rightfully so, pretty good about themselves after the game in the locker room. Was it? It was a...
As much as anyone who's really been paying attention would acknowledge, look, Joe Flacco doesn't deserve nearly all the blame for how this offense has gone this year. I mean, you can talk about coaching, offensive line play, the lack of a consistent running game, not getting a ton of production prior to Sunday.
Drop balls. Don't forget drop balls in there. We got to throw those in there, too.
I mean, everything. But one thing we had talked about over and over was even if Joe wasn't the biggest problem, he wasn't being a big enough answer for this Ravens offense. He certainly was that on Sunday. I mean, Steve Smith, Marshall Yanda said it. Several veteran players said in that locker room, and it's no surprise, but it was just a reminder, we go as Joe goes, and that was as good as we've seen Joe Flacco play in a couple years. So it was really encouraging to see. Clearly, Miami had all kinds of issues trying to cover the middle portion of the field. I mean, I've never... That's some of the worst pass defense I've ever seen, where you have, God bless Dennis Pitt. I'm happy for him. 2 touchdowns, first time in 3 years. He's reached the end zone, but they made him look like Antonio Gates in his prime, just streaking down the middle portion of the field almost uncovered. But that said, put aside, because Miami has been a pretty good football team this year. They were terrible on Sunday, but the Ravens made them look terrible. And I think that's where you just have to be really excited. We've seen Joe Flacco be a really streaky quarterback, and the 2012 postseason, the best example there. You're hoping that this can be the start of him getting on that kind of a roll, this offense getting on that kind of a roll. Steve Smith said it. We'll find out how much of a breakthrough this is for this offense, or is it just an anomaly starting next Monday night in Foxborough? But it was really good to see this. And again, I think everyone from Flacco, Steve Smith, down to Brashad Perriman and Ronnie Stanley, the youngest guys on this Ravens offense, Kenneth Dixon, I think everyone needed a reminder or just an example of, it's not just talk. This offense can play at a high level. Now the challenge will be duplicating it here over the next few weeks when we know that schedule is going to get very challenging, starting with next Monday night against New England, of course.
We got the long week this week. I want to remind everyone, Marshall Yanda will be out with us on Wednesday night at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry, as well as There Goes My Hero. We hope to see everybody out in Carroll County on Wednesday night with the Christmas lights to meet the big offensive lineman who I threatened him with the picture without the beard. He said he got the word from Pitta. Speaking of Pitta, by the way, while we're on that, he did come over and say that he should do our radio show a little more often. He did offer that after the game on Sunday.
Yeah, well, I joked with him on Thursday night at Greenmount Station that, the key to untapping this offense is getting Dennis Pitta a touchdown, and then it's going to be all downhill after that. It's going to be easy after that, and, well, we'll see what happens after this game, but it was certainly impressive to see that. I mean, again, the football part of it aside, you have to feel happy for this guy. I mean, he hadn't had a touchdown since his first game back from the first hip injury back in December of 2013. And look, the numbers he's been a contributor to this offense, not in the way that he would have hoped. Hasn't had a ton of impactful catches to this point in the season, but boy, did the Ravens find something with him against that Dolphins middle portion of that defense. I mean, he was just open, getting yards after the catch. I mean, it was just, it was, I don't know if I'd even say vintage Dennis Pitta, because he's never been a guy that picks up a ton of yards after the catch. He's kind of been that guy that finds the window in the zone and sits down and catches it and moves the chains. But this was as good as we've seen him certainly look since the second hip injury. It was really good to see that, and you're hoping some of those principles, just using the middle portion of the field. I think one thing that was just really reminiscent about this game, and I know Joe Flacco was even asked about it. I think actually Dennis Pitta was asked about it. Sorry. The comparison was made to that Giants game in December of 2012, where, remember, the Ravens were coming off of a 3-game losing streak. They had fired Cam Cameron. Everything looked to be so dire.
That was the Flacco planking that had happened the week before against Denver,
right,
yes.
Right, and the Ravens just, that was their second game under Jim Caldwell. they figured it out, and they exploded, and they beat the tar out of a Giants team that was coming off of defending Super Bowl champion, trying to make the playoffs themselves, and that was really what got the ball rolling. And I think the Ravens are hoping to get a similar effect here. Now, they got a long way to go to see if this is going to be that profound of a turning point. But again, even if it's just the confidence alone that, hey, it's not just talk. We've now done what we said we've been capable of doing all year long. You got to duplicate it, and I'm guessing that New England's going to look at what the Ravens did. Pittsburgh's going to look at what the Ravens did. Cincinnati, Week 17, they'll look at what the Ravens did in this game to have the success that they did, and those teams will try to counter that. This is a game of adjustments, but whatever Miami tried to throw the Ravens' way on Sunday, the Ravens countered and threw something even better at them. It was just really, really encouraging to see that. And again, I think from a confidence boost kind of standpoint, you couldn't have asked for any more about this one beyond just the importance of getting the win.
Ravens win 38-6. Got some extra time this week to get ready for the New England game on Monday night. Obviously, they were victorious over the Rams early on Sunday as well. We're going to have a whole week. We're going to go up to Boston. We're going to talk to a bunch of writers. We're going to talk to a bunch of people in and around the Patriots to get a look at that. That suddenly becomes one hell of a Monday night football game now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks a lot better than it would have looked a couple weeks ago. I mean, no Rob Gronkowski. And, I mean, the Ravens putting together their best offensive performance of the year. It certainly feels a lot more like the Ravens have a puncher's chance going up there. I mean, I'll be honest. You asked me 3 weeks ago how much of a chance the Ravens had going up to New England and getting a win there. I would have told you not good.
Well, we stunk, and they had Rob Gronkowski, right?
Yeah. So now, I mean, if you're going to ask me who I think's the better team, I mean, well, New England has a much more impressive body of work this season than what the Ravens have done. But it does seem that gap has closed a little bit. Now, we'll see how much. I mean, certainly facing the Miami Dolphins in Baltimore is a different task than going to Foxborough and taking on New England in a primetime road game. But you feel a lot better about that. Again, it's just there's such a confidence factor to this. And look, you know me, Nestor. I'm not the guy that talks a whole lot about moral victories and those intangibles, because a lot of times it can be very fleeting. And this might end up being fleeting. I mean, if the Ravens go up to New England and score 13 points and lose 26-13, then we'll probably be talking how we've talked through the first 11 games of this season. But, this one just gives you a little bit different feel, gives you a little more hope. And the one factor that I think you mentioned, but we haven't talked about it too much, this offensive line performed exceptionally well. And as I noted before the game, third straight game with the same starting offensive line on the field. It's the first time they've done that since weeks 1, 2, and 3. I think that continuity, as much as you want to talk about next man up and having confidence in guys filling in, and injuries are a reality. We know that. But it makes things that much easier when you have some continuity on your offensive line. And, not that the Ravens ran the ball a whole lot on Sunday, but when they did, they were effective enough, and certainly they gave Joe Flacco a ton of time. I think, was not sacked at all. I believe was hit twice. So, not talking about any kind of pressure whatsoever. And that's all we heard about this Miami front. It was supposed to be a group that got after the quarterback, wasn't particularly good against the run, but Sue had one hit, Cameron Wake had one hit, but there was not much disruption up front whatsoever, and that's where that might be the most exciting development. We've talked about this the last couple of weeks as far as when the Ravens have looked good and put together a couple of good drives here and there. But on Sunday, to see it come together with the offensive line playing as well as it did against a talented pass rushing front, and to give Flacco that kind of time, and then for the rest of this offense to produce in the way it did, that's where things get more exciting, and that's where you have a little more confidence in this team being able to do what it's going to take to secure a playoff spot and to edge out Pittsburgh in the AFC North. So, I think Flacco was the star, obviously, throwing 4 touchdowns and just a little bit under 400 yards, but that offensive line made things that much easier for him that he was able to thrive.
Well, and I would also say any game where Mallett is handing the ball off to Dixon and West at the end. You look at the rushing totals, it's insane. I mean, 16 rushes between those two guys and 106 yards. I mean, just averaging 6.5 yards a carry. I mean, it was that kind of a day for them even at the end, and it was very obvious in the fans leaving. It was a little chilly outside. But, the real star of the game sort of behind the scenes, and I don't know why John Harbaugh offered this. I mean, it's been 9 years around here. I can't remember John Harbaugh ever coming up to the podium and saying, we had some disagreements in our meeting room, and look at how it worked out. I mean, he almost led with that in the postgame kind of strangely, right?
Well, I mean, it's something that's been talked about over the course of this past week. I mean, everyone remembers last week after the Cincinnati game where Flacco basically said, yeah, we won. I'm happy about that. We can win games like this. I get that. We've won games like this in the past. But he made a comment about being disappointed that they didn't choke out their opponent, that he felt that they had a chance to really completely pull away from Cincinnati.
And by the way, Pitta echoed that Thursday night. I mean, Pitta had some sentiment about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that these guys felt strongly about, that they weren't very happy. They had a 16-3 halftime lead, and they weren't happy that it came down to the Ravens special teams having to pull off an intentional hold and taking a safety just to secure the win. They weren't happy about that. So John Harbaugh alluded to this, that Flacco and Marty Morningwig had some animated discussion about it this week. Didn't say that it got, that there was animosity necessarily, but said that it was spirited, that it was passionate. To borrow a phrase that a certain former linebacker talked about a quarterback.
But he has no passion. He's the quarterback.
Right. But I think it really spoke to. I like the fact that the Ravens did not just settle for what they did against Cincinnati as saying that's good enough. That's one thing. You know me. I've been really critical of this offense this year, and I'm not alone in that. I mean, I've seen what everyone else has seen. There's been frustration, just about every game, at least to some extent, about this offense all year, even when they've won. So, but you've never gotten a sense from the offensive players on this football team that they've ever been satisfied with what they've done. Yeah, there have been some nice performances here and there, nice individual performances, but you've never gotten a sense that they've ever felt, yeah, this is good enough what we're doing.
Yeah, we've never had a happy locker room. Like, not happy in that way. Happy that they survived some of the wins earlier in the year, but not happy like, holy hell, we played a great game. And there was some of that going on Sunday, and that's a good feeling 12 weeks in when they haven't. They certainly haven't been cocky or overconfident, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they haven't had any reason to.
Sure.
When you're 6-5, that's okay, but you're certainly not blowing the rest of the league away. But that's one thing that I've always liked about what I've heard from these guys after games, at least the offensive side of the ball, guys talking about, hey, we need to be better. This isn't good enough. Just because we won doesn't mean that it needs to be the effort every week or that this is going to be good enough every week. So that's where, you do have a sense of they've never rested on their laurels, and that's where you do have more hope for them improving. Now, again, talking about it is one thing, actually doing it is another entirely, and that's where I think it's so encouraging that they were able to do what they did on Sunday. I mean, you look at the numbers there, 5 of 11 on third down. I mean, how about the fact the Ravens went for it on fourth down twice and successful both times? John Harbaugh and Marty Morningwig in this offense, you can't at all accuse them of being conservative, even to the point where in the second half when they had a three possession lead, and you're just kind of saying, well, you could probably run the ball a little bit more at this point. And they kept the foot on the gas, and it certainly worked out. And they didn't run a whole lot until they got to the fourth quarter, and at that point the game was completely out of reach for the Dolphins. But it's hard to argue. Through 3 quarters, the Ravens had only run 9 times, but and they'd thrown 43 times. But at that point, Joe Flacco 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's the results speak for themselves, and again, just a nice performance to finally be able to do this as an offense. And now going into this final 4-game stretch, knowing that they're going to be playing 3 of those on the road, 2 of them, New England and Pittsburgh, and knowing that both those games are going to have huge stakes, and that Cincinnati game is probably going to have really high stakes. It's not going to be easy, but being 7-5 and coming off your best overall performance of the season, what else can you really ask for when you consider it was just a little over a month ago? This team was 3-4 and was coming off of a winless October, and you didn't know how the rest of the season was going to go.
He is Luke Jones. You can find him, Baltimore Luke, out on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. We got Marshall Yanda swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry in a rare, long-form conversation with Marshall. This should be good because he's thoughtful when he wants to speak. I hope I get him in the right vibe on Wednesday night. Carroll County usually does that for folks, so it'd be great to have Marshall out and chat with him. We'll be swabbing for There Goes My Hero. That's going to be big fun. We're going to come back, talk some more about the secondary and Eric Weddle and coaching and special teams, and certainly have all week to discuss the New England Patriots. You can find anything you missed this week out in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault at WNST.net. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox digitally. I said that right. Every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. You can sign up at WNST.net. It's free, it's easy, and you get everything first, including Jimmy Smith playing, which we're also going to be discussing here this week. Buffalo Wild Wings is our home. Every Monday night, we're there, doing the best seat in the house competition, as well as the Blazing Wing Eating Challenge. Giving away a $100 gift card and a limo. Big doings this Monday because next Monday it's Ravens Patriot night. So if you want to win that limo, get yourself out to Buffalo Wild Wings on Monday night. And at halftime, we give that away. Nasty at WNST.net is the way to find me. I'm giving away advice and dispensing of knowledge and punditing out at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on Facebook Live, as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. Eggnog, Yuletide cheer, and WNST.net. We never stop talking Baltimore sports.